I am Jeff Foxworthy. It has been debated what I do. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a son, brother, child of God. I'm also a comedian and a writer and an actor. Do a lot of different things. But what I do and who I am are not really the same thing. Christ has been in my life since I was 7 years old. You know, I was one of those kids, and I didn't know it at the time. I was very creative, and so I grew up in a pretty strict Southern Baptist church where people were like, don't drink, don't smoke, don't cuss, don't step out of line, don't. And I remember being young and thinking, okay, God, I got a problem because I love you, but I can't do this. I'm kind of wired like this. And it took a long time in life for me to kind of realize, oh, you wired me like this because you got a purpose for this just as you've got a purpose for that, because you're infinitely creative and you made me creative. And I was like, oh, okay, you made me this way. And it's just kind of neat. I write, I do stand up, I draw, I paint, but I can't even take pride in those things because I don't know why I can do them. I can just do them. Well, that's my gift. Like some people's gift is taking care of old people. Some people's gift is taking care of babies, you know. Some people's gift is medicine. So it's just my gift. But once I realized, hey, it doesn't belong to me, this was something precious that was given to me, now I'm the steward of it. And it's like, how do you use it? So it's kind of influenced everything I've ever done. I mean, nothing in life prepared me to be a person of notoriety. But once that happened, it's like, okay, you got a platform. What are you going to do with this platform? And hopefully I've used it well. Well, you know, Jesus said, I've come so you can have life to the full. You can have life to the fullest. And I think so many of us live our lives without it being full because we chase the wrong things. And so much of it is perspective. So I'm 64 now. I've seen the 40s, the 50s, the 30s. I've raised kids. They're grown. I've got grandkids. So my perspective is different than a guy that's sitting out there that's 28 years old. And so maybe I can say to him, hey, here's what the world's going to tell you is important, but take it from somebody that has been rich, been famous, been poor, been obscure. Here's what I found to be true and not true. And that's all I want for these guys, that they live life to the full. You know, there's no practice lap. You get one lap around the track. Make the most of it. So we were created for a purpose. One of the things that I really enjoy in life is kind of mentoring men. And I think it's heavily influenced because I grew up without a dad. And that was the thing that I really craved as a kid was having a dad. My dad left. My dad was he was really good at chasing tail, and he was married 6 times and had like 1,000 affairs in between. But when your parent leaves, no matter what they say, what you feel as a kid is, I wasn't worth sticking around for. I wasn't enough. And it kind of stays with you. That may be why I'm a comedian. I don't know, is to try to get people to like me because I didn't feel like I had that value. But so I love to talk about purpose. And one of the things that you learn as you get older is perspective. I've been poor. I grew up in Hateville, Georgia with a dirt yard. We didn't know we were poor. We had a great upbringing. I've been rich, so I've seen both sides of that. I've been where nobody knew who I was, and I've been where everybody knew who I was. I've been a newlywed and a new father, and teenagers and grown. And so that's the only advantage that I have is my perspective is maybe different than some of you younger guys. One of the things that I've learned in life, one of the things that really cripples guys is we we really are scared to be authentic with each other. We're really scared to tell somebody, hey, I'm struggling with this, or this scares me, or I'm worried about that, because that's not what a man does. Man just handles everything. But one of the things Jesus said was, I came so you would have life to the fullest. And I think when men aren't authentic, we don't allow ourselves to live to the fullest. And so I don't want to embarrass anybody, but anybody that's not scared, raise a hand if you'll answer a question. Yes, sir.
Doc Holliday.
No, it's not. That's your name? Doc Holliday? You're my huckleberry. That's awesome.
So I'm here with my small group. And just why I'm here is I knew this was a great opportunity for men to fellowship.
Yeah, man. So Doc has a small group, and I will tell you guys this. If I was going to encourage you to do anything in your life, it would be get in a small group. Create a small group. Tell me a little bit about your small group.
Well, let's see. We look at it as we're a team. So groups are ladies that sit around and drink wine, right? A team is headed towards the same goal in mind, and that's so every man is better than when he comes in. We're there, every man supports another man in the circle. And with that, we do life very well together. And any of them can attest to it.
So the goal is kind of to live life to the fullest.
Absolutely.
For those of you that don't know what a small group is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a small group of guys that meet probably weekly. I've been in 2 of them in my life, one of them for over 20 years, and we would meet Thursday mornings in the back of a barbecue restaurant and have breakfast. Same guys every week. But it's what Doc's talking about. You're doing life together. And so, I mean, we would set it up with, it was on biblical principles. And it's like, I know some of you here aren't believers, and that, you know, I am, and I'm not going to apologize for it. But it's like even things like the 10 Commandments, you know, that if you think about it from a father's perspective, thou shalt not commit adultery. Well, does that mean he's not going to love you if you do that? No. What it says is, if you do this, you're going to break all trust with your wife and all trust with your kids, and you're going to jack up your life. So that's why it's a rule. That's why it's a guardrail. Don't do this. You're going to jack up your life. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or thy neighbor's possessions. So if you're not satisfied with what you have, if you're looking around, and comparison is the death of contentment, I will tell you that. If you're looking around going, I'm not happy because I don't have what he's got, it's going to jack up your life. You're going to start chasing the wrong things. And so that's why there were these commandments. It was a loving father going, don't do this. You'll screw up your life if you do this. So, but my small group, we went through the birth of kids together. We buried parents together. You know, we might have a lesson plan. We'd pick books of the Bible and we say, okay, over the next month, we're going to go through the book of John. But if some guy came in and he's like, hey guys, I'm really struggling in my marriage, we'd close the lesson, and that's what we do that day. Is other guys would go, hey man, I've been through that. I've struggled in my marriage. And I think, and the reason I ask you why you're here tonight, you wouldn't be here if everything in your life was perfect. As I just get that feeling, as you're like, man, I've chased everything the world says there is to chase, but I'm still not satisfied. And that is the beauty of a small group, and that is the beauty of faith to me. Here's the other thing that we do as men is, I used to notice when I would take my kids to school, and I have all girls, and that's why I have the gray hair. I have all girls. But
But people would ask little girls, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a little girl could say, I want to be a mom, and that was a great answer. But little boys never said, I want to be a dad, or I want to be a husband. Little boys would say, I want to be a football player, or I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a policeman. And so I think early on as men, we're indoctrinated, we're identified by what we do is who we are. I was doing an interview 7 or 8 years ago, talking to a lady, and one of her questions, she goes, okay, so you do stand-up, you write books, you paint, you host TV shows. Which one are you? And I thought, well, that's a weird question. I've never been asked that before. And I said to her, I said, well, the things you've named are all things that I do. And I love the things that I do. I feel like the luckiest. I don't know why I can do them. I can just do them. It is a gift. And so many of you hear what you do for a living. It's a gift. I can't even take credit for being good at anything because I don't know why I can do it. I can just do it. But it's a gift, and I've been entrusted with it, and I'm a steward of it. I said, but those are all things that I do. Who I am is I'm a husband, and I'm a father, and I'm a brother, and I'm a son, and I'm a child of God, and I'm a person of this community. And so through the course of my life, what I do may change many, many times. Probably a lot of you folks. I mean, you've changed careers, changed jobs many, many times. Nothing wrong with that. But what I wanted was who I am to stay consistent through all of that. So they're not the same thing. And as men, we got to unburden ourselves from that what we do for a living is our identity. It's who we are. It's not. It's what you do for a living. It's what you do to make money to feed your family and to house them. And it's real easy as a man to get lost in that work thing, and you start chasing the wrong thing. And all of a sudden, you start chasing the good at the expense of the best. You know, and that's what the devil does. The devil never makes things look bad. He makes them look good. Wouldn't it be good to have more money, and that way you could leave more to your family and put your kids in the nicest school? And you go, oh yeah, that looks good. I'll start running down here. In the meantime, you never go home, and you never spend time with your wife who feels overburdened, and you don't spend time with your kids who feel ignored, and you were chasing the good and you missed the best. You know, and you don't even have to come. Here's the great news. You don't have to be good at these things. Because like not having a dad as a young kid, I remember thinking, I'm never going to do this to my kids. I didn't know I was going to be a comedian that was going to be on the road all the time. But I'm like, my kids are never going to feel like they're not the priority in my life. And so you know what I did? Well, I'll tell you a great story. So I'm a bow hunter. So I'm on a bow hunt in the Northwest Territories of Canada, 30 miles south of the Arctic Circle. And it seems like we walked forever, and we found a few caribou, but none we wanted to shoot. So we stay out there glassing all day, and at night we're walking back. And I mean, we probably walked 10 or 12 miles. You know, you got these backpacks on, you're carrying your bow, and you're dead tired. And as we crest the hill down in the valley, I can see the lake where our lean-to is. And our guide's like, come on, we're going this way to the left. I go, dude, no. I said, we can cut straight down through here and cut the distance in half, and we'll be back at the lean-to. He goes, we could. But that's where all the grizzly bears live, is right down in that valley. And I'm like, why don't we go this way over here? But I learned an important lesson in that is don't guide the guide. Don't guide the guide. He's the reason you paid him to be there. Well, it was the same thing in my life. I didn't have a great father modeled for me. But that didn't mean I couldn't be a great father. What I needed to do was to find guides. And so I would look at guys that I knew that were great dads, and I would just pick their brains. I'm like, tell me, how do you be a great, I don't know. Tell me how you be a great dad. I would find guys that were great husbands. And I'm like, tell me how to do this, you know. And that's why being authentic is so important, because you're not just being authentic with other people. You got to be authentic with yourself. You got to be authentic and tell yourself, hey, this is where I know that I've got a blind spot or I got a weak spot. Because mine was never alcohol. I mean, I don't have anything against it. It doesn't do it for me. I'm just not a big drinker. It's never been drugs. I'm not going to tell you that I haven't tried things way back in the past, but that never did it for me. But like my dad, I have always appreciated a good-looking woman. So like when we were doing the blue collar tour, and this is going on, I've done stand-up for almost 40 years. This has always been the way I do it. But I knew out of the things that get men in trouble, that's where I was vulnerable. The other two, I wasn't going to go out and do heroin. I wasn't going to go out and get blackout drunk. But I like a pretty girl. So when we would do blue collar at the end of the night, we'd get through with the show, and the other guys would always go out and hang out at a bar, and they would go, Fox, come on, and let's go have a beer. And I'm like, nah, I'm just going to go back to my room and order room service and call home. And it wasn't that I thought having a beer was a bad thing. Not at all. Here's what I knew. I knew Jeff, not being a drinker, if he had one beer and we were having fun and laughing and cutting up, I'd probably have 2 beers. And if I had 2 and we're still laughing and drinking and cutting up, I might have 3 beers. Well, now, Jeff's getting happy, and all it takes is somebody in a low-cut dress that smells good sitting down next to me, and I'm going to start flirting with her, and I'm in a really precarious situation where I can do the same thing that my dad did. And so I'm like, be wise. Don't put yourself in a situation where you're going to be vulnerable. Because if you break that thing at home, you can glue it back together, but it's never the same. It's never going to be the same. So be wise and don't if your thing is alcohol, don't go out to the bar. It's going to get you in trouble. Be honest with yourself. I mean, all of us have weak spots. All of us have blind spots. But be wise enough to avoid those spots. Because here's what happens. Trust, and you know this with your friends, trust is built, it's like a cup of coffee. You build trust one drop at a time. When you meet somebody, you don't know nothing about them, you have no trust. And then you'll go out and you'll do something together and you go, I really like that dude. And you got a couple of drops of trust in there, and then over the months and over the years, that cup fills up one drop at a time and it's full. But when you break trust, it's like breaking the bottom out of that coffee cup. You don't lose it a drop at a time, you lose it all at once. And when you lose it, it never comes back the way it was before. And so for me, yeah, I like a pretty girl, but I didn't want my kids to look at me that way. I didn't want my kids to look at me the way I would look at my dad when he was on marriage number 4, and we'd go out to eat somewhere and he'd start flirting with the waitress, and I'm like, here we go again. You know, because he may end up leaving me at the restaurant and leaving with her. I mean, that's, he was good. He was really good. But I didn't trust, and I didn't want my kids to ever feel that way about me. I really think we all want to find what our purpose is, because, I mean, it's either one way or the other. We're either, for the people that don't have faith, we're a total accident. And so you believe a body that has a heart that beats billions of times and lungs that breathe and a reproductive system that works is a total fluke. It's a total accident. Well, the chances of that being a total accident, you got a better opportunity of dropping all the parts to a 747 down a flight of stairs, and at the bottom they all come together and they're sealed right, and the plane is fully functional. Which one's more out there? You know, people say to me, well, people of faith are closed-minded. I said, no, you're closed-minded. This makes much more sense than what you believe. I believe there's a creator. And if we're created, we were created with a purpose. It's not just an accident that we're here. I believe every single guy in this room, God looks at him and goes, check this out. Alex right here, that's my masterpiece. I've never made but one Alex before. If God had a refrigerator, your picture would be on the front of it. He's that proud of you. And for you guys that don't know who God is, I think the most incredible piece of literature ever written is Luke 15. It's about 2 paragraphs. It's this big. It's the most incredible piece of literature ever written. And it's right before they killed Jesus and crucified him. But it's the story of the prodigal son. And Jesus tells this right before he dies. So, probably like deathbed confessions, he's probably spewing out stuff that's really important right before he dies. And he tells the story of a father that had 2 sons. And the youngest son comes to the dad and he says, I want my inheritance now. Well, in the Eastern culture, what he was actually saying is, you're not dying fast enough to suit me. I wish you were dead. I want what's coming to me now. I mean, can you imagine that? A father with your kid going, you're not dying fast enough for me? And so the father gives him his inheritance, and the kid goes out and blows it all on whatever, booze, drugs, women, blows through it all to the point that he's got nothing left. He ends up working for somebody, feeding pea pods to their hogs. And he's watching the pigs eat this, and he goes, I'm so hungry and so broke. I wish I could eat what I'm feeding the pigs. And so he swallows his pride, and he says, you know what? I know that the way the servants on my dad's farm eat. I'm going to swallow my pride. I'm going to go back and tell my dad I screwed up and just see if he'll give me a job working on his place. So the kid turns around and goes to come home. And my favorite line in the thing, it says, and while he was still a long way away, his father saw him. Well, you don't see somebody a long way away unless you're looking for them. Which meant after the kid had said, you're not dying fast enough, the dad's standing out there every day just looking on the horizon, every day waiting on that kid to come back. And when he saw him, he went running to him, and he told his servants, he said, go get the robe, the sandals, and the family ring, and kill the fatted calf, because my son that was dead is alive. He's come back. Gave him the family name back, the family ring, the sandals. The only people that could wear those were people within the family. Servants didn't wear shoes. And the older brother who had stayed home through the whole thing, and he's like, are you kidding me? He said, I've stayed here and I've done everything Dad asked me to do. And my brother takes his inheritance and goes and squanders it all away. And now he comes back, and we're going to have a feast and a festival and a celebration because he's decided to come back. Do you know who was anybody, I don't know, Bible scholars, do you know who was most upset to see that younger son come back? Anybody know? Yeah, the fatted calf. Yeah. Wow. It's good. The fatted calf had to be looking on the horizon going, no. So the older son, he wouldn't come to the celebration. He's just out there pouting, and the dad walks out to him. He's like, come on, man, your brother's back. He was lost, and he's found, and he's back. And the son's like, no. He goes, I've done everything that you've ever asked me to do. Whether I wanted to do it or not, you asked me to do it, I did it. I stayed, I didn't ask you for my inheritance, and you've never even let me grill out hot dogs in the backyard. And he blows it all, and we're killing the fatted calf. And the father goes, buddy, he said, don't you understand? He goes, everything I have is yours. Everything that I have is yours. But he was lost and now he's found. And so the message of the parable is, it's called the prodigal son, but it's not about the son, it's about the father. Which is why I think I really clung to this story. Meaning, you can't do anything so bad that he's going to love you any less. Think about that kind of love. We don't have that kind of love. You can't do anything bad enough that I'm going to love you one bit less, and you can't do anything good enough that I'm going to love you one bit more. I love you to the top of the tank because that's who I am. And for me, that's where my faith comes in my life. I didn't have a dad, and there came a point where I said, you know what? Here's what I want. Here's probably what every guy in here wants. I want somebody to know who I am intimately. I want somebody to be there for me. That's what I wanted in a dad. I didn't need to go to Six Flags, but man, I sure would have liked having you home for dinner. I wanted him to be there every day. I wanted him to know who I was. And I wanted him to love me unconditionally. And then it struck me, it was like, oh, that's who Jesus was talking about in Luke 15. So you know what, God? I'm going to let you be my dad. And there's going to be days where at my age now, when the world beats me up, I will just get in the evening, I go, Daddy, can I just climb in your lap and will you rub my head for a minute? Because I don't know what to do right now. And that's the way he loves us. You know, that's what we want as men. We want to be significant. We want the Father's blessing. It's what every guy in here wants. You want the Father's blessing. But God is sinless, and he can't be around sin, and men were corrupted in the garden. And so what he did, he goes, hey, you're not just significant to me. Let me tell you how much you mean to me is I'm going to send my son, and I'm going to let them spit on him, punch him in the face, beat him with 40 lashes with a whip that had little pieces of glass and iron hooks in the back of it, and rip the skin off of his back, and then I'm going to let him nail him to a tree at the top of the hill to pay for all your sins. So one day after you die, and you're going to be on Judgment Day, you're going to be sitting before God, and they're going to start bringing up all the stuff you've done in your life. And I picture it. I'm a picture guy. I'm a writer. I picture it sitting in a courtroom, and every time they name, hey, remember that time you did this with that girl that didn't really want to do this? And Jesus is your defender, and he stands up with that hole in his hand. And he goes, I already paid for that. And when they read all the charges about you, everyone, he's going to go, already paid for that. And so the way God sees you is sinless because you have been atoned. He is the atonement, and I need that. I need that because it's the desire of my heart to be a good husband and be a good dad. Even more than being a good comedian. I want to be a good comedian, but I want those things more. And every single day I'll be driving down the street and go, oh my God, look at this woman over here in the spandex pants and the top. And I have to tell myself, don't look, don't look. I want to look. Sometimes I do look. But I sure try not to. Because of how much my dad loves me. And my dad tells me, hey, if you look, then you might flirt. And if you flirt, you might end up doing something that's going to wreck all these things that are so important to you. And that's what I want for you guys, is to tell you, you know, the world tells you, well, if you have money, if you have fame, those are the things that are going to make you happy. The world lies to you because in the mid-'90s, I did a sitcom. I filmed it in L.A., and we filmed it right next to Roseanne, who had the #1 show. And at the time, Roseanne was making $1 million a week. $1 million every 5 days. She was the most miserable human being I've ever been around. She had all that fame and all that money, and she'd be in the parking lot trying to run over people. She'd be in the parking lot screaming at people and throwing things at them. And I'm like, okay, the world lied because fame and money hadn't made her happy. You don't get a practice lap here. Be wise. It's not like NASCAR where you can go around and get your tires hot for a few times and then you start the race. We get one lap. Every day matters. And that's what life is. It's choices and consequences. Here's what I would encourage you to do in addition to having a small group. Think about the men in your life that you look at and you think, that's the kind of man I want to be. Might be an uncle, might be a grandfather. You know, I was lucky. I had a really good grandfather. Never told me he loved me, but I know he did because he took me everywhere he went after my dad left. But you look at the men in your life that you go, that's the kind of man I want to be. And I will be willing to bet you every single one of them was not a self-focused person. I bet every single one of them was others focused. They didn't think about what they wanted. They thought about what other people needed. I grew up in Hapeville down by the airport. I was really lucky. That was the only Chick-fil-A in the world for decades. Had no idea it would become the phenomenon it was. But I was lucky to grow up around Truett Cathy, who started Chick-fil-A. And Truett was one of the wisest men I ever met. And he used to ask me when I was a little kid, he would look at me and he'd go, Jeff, you know how to tell when somebody needs encouragement? I say, no, sir. He goes, if they're breathing. He goes, everybody needs encouragement. It doesn't cost you anything to give it to them. No schooling, no money. And so I learned at an early age, be an encourager. You walk into a place and the homely little girl running the cash registers there go, oh, I love your hair. That's so pretty. Doesn't cost you a thing, made her day. Made her day that somebody saw her, that somebody noticed. And what it does is it teaches you to see the good in things instead of the bad in things. You know, being a mental guy, when I get up in the morning, I pray two things to God. I'm like, A, let me put on the slippers of gratitude. Let me not take for granted that I have something to eat, that I got a house, that I got a bed, that I got a car. Something like 11 billion people will never take a hot shower one day in their life. If you took a hot shower today, you beat those 11 billion people. And you start seeing blessings everywhere. That's what being an encourager does. You start seeing the good all around you and just realize just how lucky we are. Mark Twain was really cool. He was funny, but he was really smart. Mark Twain said the two most important days in your life, the first one is the day you were born, and the second one is the day you figure out why. And to me, that's why you're here tonight, man. And I want you to be men of excellence. I want you to be men that when you die, people are sitting there with tears going, dang, that was a good dude. That dude loved on and took care of so many people, because it's not about us. And I will tell you this about your kids. Man, your kids watch everything you do. Your kids watch the way you treat your wife. And I don't care if you got sons or daughters. One of the greatest things in the world you can do for your kids is to love on their mom. Because if you got sons, you're going to teach them this is the way you treat a woman. If you have daughters, you're going to teach them this is what to expect from a man. One of the greatest things in the world you can do for your kids is love on your wife. You treat her with respect. You love on her. I've been married 38 years, and half the time there are groceries for flowers, but I bought her flowers every single week for 38 years. Because I didn't want to end up like my dad there. So be authentic, guys. When you leave here, pick 5 guys, pick 6 guys you like and say, hey, let's commit to this. Because the reason your wife gave you a kitchen pass tonight is she has hopes that you're going to become a better man. Not that you're not a good man already, but you can be a better man. I can be a better man tomorrow. But that's what she wants. And I want that to be what you want. So I'm going to open it up to questions, and I'll answer anything. I'll be authentic with you. But that's why I'm here. I'm not getting paid. I left my wife tonight. We're watching a really good series on Netflix. Man, I've been so lucky and blessed in my life. I want this. I want other guys to have this. I open it up for questions. Anybody's? Yes, sir.
I have twin daughters too. You have all daughters?
Yeah.
What's something you've done to instill your faith in them? Maybe any traditions or things that you've done to teach them on the way?
You know, here's the weird thing with kids. They're stinking smart. It was real funny. Like, my life led me doing things that I never envisioned me doing. For decades, I worked with kids with cancer. My wife and I were the head fundraising people for the Duke Children's Hospital, and I did a ton of things with St. Jude's, and just loved working with kids with cancer. So I got invited one day. A guy invited me down to the Atlanta mission. Well, I'd never been homeless. I never cared about homeless people. That's nasty. That's honest. My care of homeless people was if you came up to my car at the stop sign, here's $5, please go away. And I had a guy invite me to lunch at the Atlanta Mission. The first kid I met down there, 21 years old, in the heart of Atlanta, living at the Atlanta Mission. My first thought, if we're going to be authentic, is get out of here. You're 21 years old, you're healthy, get a job. His name was Jason. Of course, being a comic and a writer, I want to know everybody's story. I said, Jason, what's your story? Why are you in a homeless mission? He said, well, it was my mom and dad and me and my brother. And when I was 11, my mom killed herself. He said, 2 years after that, my brother killed himself. And it was me and my dad. We were doing pretty good. In my second year of college, my dad killed himself. And he said, I got to where I couldn't feel anything. I could not hurt anymore, so I started smoking crack and flunked out of school, lost a place to live, lost all my money, and I just couldn't hurt anymore. And I'm sitting across from him going, well, I would have started smoking crack too. And all of a sudden you realize there, but for the grace of God, I'm in a homeless mission. And what I learned over the years, people tend to view them as drug addicts or alcoholics, and a lot of them are. But that's the symptom. If you go back and find out the reason, so many of them had been molested, so many of them had been abandoned, so many of them some horrible trauma had happened to them early in life, and the hurt was so bad they couldn't deal with it, so they numbed. And so I asked the guy, I said, why'd you invite me down here? He goes, I want you to start a small group. There we go again, small group. He said, these guys have chapel a couple of times a week. They've never had a small group. And I did say to him, I said, there's almost 7 million people in Atlanta, and you can't find anybody more qualified to do this than me, But I said yes. And when I first started going, I had to stop at Chick-fil-A and buy them chicken biscuits just to get them to come. I had to bribe them. And it started with me and 12 guys, and over the course of a dozen years, it grew to 32 group leaders and almost 300 homeless guys every Tuesday morning. I would get up at 5 o'clock, which was really hard for me because when you're a comic, you're doing a show late, and because I had kids, I would lease a plane. I spent so much money. I would fly home every night, no matter where I was on the road. If I was doing a show in Minnesota, I'd do it. I'd get back on that plane. I'd fly home. I'd land at PDK at 2. I'd go home. I'd get up at 6, and I'd take them to school. I went through like a decade without sleeping. But when I would do the missions on Tuesday morning, I had to get up at 5 because I had to be at Chick-fil-A at 6:30 and wait for them to unlock the door in order to be downtown by 7. And I did it forever. And one of my daughters told me not long ago, I never said anything to the kids about it. She said, Dad, do you know what one of the pillars of my faith is? Is how, without saying anything about it, and I know you were dead tired and you got up at 5 o'clock and you would go get those biscuits and you would go down there and do Bible study with those guys. And she said, I just used to think if there's something that good that you felt that need to share it, that I need to delve into it deeper. So that just became one of the... So it's not just what you say. It's because if what you're saying is not what you're doing, it's hollow. It's what you do. You have to be a guy that lives it out, even if you're tired.
You said that the first or the most important days of your life were when you were born and when you realized why. When did you realize why?
You know what? And here's the weird thing about a gift. When I was a kid, I would save my allowance and I would buy comedy records and I'd memorize them and I'd go to school and do them, and I was always in trouble. I'd always get on the report card. All he's trying to do is make everybody in the class laugh. He won't shut up. But it never dawned on me that I could be a comedian. I actually, when I got out of school, worked at IBM, and I was the funny guy at work that was in the break room doing impersonations of the boss, and then you'd turn around, the boss would be in the doorway. That was me. And a bunch of guys I worked with entered me in a contest. Remember when the Punchline was up on Hildebrand? They had a contest every year called the Great Southeastern Laugh-Off. It wasn't an amateur night. It was a contest for working comics. So my buddies at work entered me in this contest. I'm like, no, just let me do an amateur night or something. They're like, nope, you're already in it. And so I went home and I wrote 5 minutes about my family. And I went back and did it, and I won the contest. And I was scared to death, had no idea what I was doing, but I knew a minute and a half into it, I'm like, this is what I was born to do. And I worked for a few more months at IBM, and I quit my job. And my mother's first question was, are you on the dope? I don't know what the dope is. And I'm like, No, I'm not on the dope. I said, Mom, I think I can do this. I did. I had over 8 years in a row. I did 500 or more shows a year for 8 years because I really wanted to be on Johnny Carson before he left, and I was blessed to be able to do that once. But 5 years later, I'm on Johnny Carson. That same mother said to me, you know, you wasted all those years at IBM. Okay, whatever. But that was the day. But here's the cool thing. Like, I used to get so frustrated when I was a kid in church because I went to one of them old strict Southern Baptist church where you don't drink, don't smoke, don't cuss. You walk in a straight line and you act like this and you do not deviate from that. And I remember wrestling with God as a kid going, God, I got a problem because I love you, but I can't do this because I'm wired like this. I can't do this. So I didn't know what to do. I love God, but I can't do this. And it took till I was 30 for him to go, hey, who do you think made you like this? You're my masterpiece. I don't need this. I'm infinitely creative. I need this. I need somebody that can make people laugh, but can talk and go talk to guys about me. That was my purpose through that gift. So, which is pretty stinking cool.
Spent the last 40 years really working to be a great human doing.
Human doing.
And as I am, approaching, the idea of retirement, I'd love to hear your ideas for how to be comfortable as a human being.
That's such a great question. And for men, a human doing. And it kind of goes back to that idea. And we even do that with God. I'll do for you. I'll get up and go, God, I'll get up at 5 o'clock. I'll go to the mission. I'll do this for you. I'll do this for you, do this for you. He goes, that's great, but I'm going to love you the same whether you get up and go to the mission or not. That's who I am. Here's the thing, and I don't know, maybe some of you older guys hit this. There was part of COVID that was wonderful because what COVID taught me, this is one of my few good quotes. I think wisdom is knowledge plus scars. It's things you've learned, but it's also holes you've stepped in. A lot of us, Crawford Loritz used to say, experience is not always the best teacher, but it's the only school a fool will attend. I learned a lot of things the hard way. But when COVID hit, it made me realize I'm not in control of anything. There's a bat in China that has caused the whole world to come to a screeching halt. I didn't get to be on stage for over 2 years. I'd never gone longer than 2 weeks without going on stage. 2 years without doing stand-up. I didn't travel anywhere. You guys didn't travel anywhere. We were scared. We were stuck in our house. We're wearing masks to go to the grocery store. And you realize one little bat in China did that. We think we're in control. That's a lie we tell you. Guys, you're not in control of anything. You're not in control of somebody driving over the center line tomorrow and ruining your life forever. We all hang by a thread. Every single day is a gift. And I think the greatest secret in life, if I was to teach men, if men go, what's the secret to life? I would tell you that it's this. Let it go. And I physically do that in the car. I did it this afternoon in the car. Somebody almost pushed me off the road trying to merge with me. Never slowed down. Just, it's either I'm going to hit you or you're going to hit the brakes and let me in. And I physically sit there in the car and I go, let it go. Not going to matter in 30 minutes. Let it go. And guys, that is the secret of life. There's a God and you're not it. You're not it. You're not in control. And he loves you to death, but he's in control. He tells you that. He goes, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. I created you. You're not in control. And the crazy thing is, that's freeing. So it's like, okay, I'm just freed up. And here's the thing, for people not of faith, sometimes I think, why wouldn't you be? It's so cool. Because like when the Pharisees, the church leaders, and the synagogue were trying to trip Jesus up, they asked him, okay, out of all the laws, which one's the most important? And he said, the first one is to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And the second one's like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. He said, every other law hangs from those two. So it's like every guardrail, every law hangs from those two things. Love God and love your neighbor. Love, love. That's why we were created. Because when we love on people, when we let it go, we look like him to other people. And that's the best thing we can do on earth is look. Yeah, I don't know how many shows I've worked on where somebody will come up to me and go, you're different than other people. And I go, well, if you want to know why, I'll have lunch with you. I'm not going to cram it down your throat. But I'm happy to tell you why. Because I've learned to do that. I ain't in control of it. He tells me to trust him in the morning, that I'll have something to eat, the daily bread, so I'll trust you. And here's the cool things, because it's guys, I really think we're all little kids. I love the adventure of it. I love the mystery of it. And I would encourage you to just embrace the mystery of it. And think about, like, when you're driving, it's boring to drive out west because the road's just real flat and real straight and it all looks the same and you can see what's coming 100 miles away. But I like driving where you don't know what's over the hill and when you don't know what's around the curve. And that's the way I view life. It's a stinking adventure. Where are we going today, Dad? Where are we going today? You're probably going to put me in a situation I didn't see coming, but it'll probably be real cool if I respond to it the right way. That makes life fun. It's not a burden. It's an adventure. I didn't know what I was going to say to you guys tonight. I'm like, but it's an adventure. I want to go talk to them. Let me just give you the glory for whatever I'm about.
So as a new dad, what is one piece of advice you could give to me and to all of the other new dads out there?
To the new dads? You know, it's funny because in my small group started with guys that were like professional athletes because they couldn't blend in necessarily in other small groups. And then it kind of expanded after that. But one of the guys in our group played for the NFL, and he was going, yeah, my wife, she's mad because I won't do this and that. And I told her that's not what men do. It's not what a man does. And this dude was like 6'5", 320. And I said to him, I said, you're totally wrong. I said, here's what a man does. A man does what needs doing. If it's wiping boogers out of a nose, that's what a man does. If it's cleaning a dirty diaper, that's what a man does. If it's washing the dishes while your wife does something else because they need washing and she does them every day, then that's what you do. If it means not going to play golf because she needs a break and watching the kid, that's what a man does. A man does what needs doing. And we live in a world where so many men don't want to grow up. They just want to be little boys. And I didn't want to be selfish like that. I'm like, I want to be somebody this woman can depend on. And I want these kids to know I love them to death. Man, I could do everything. I had little girls. I could bathe them. I could dress them. I could put them to bed. I could read them books. I could not do hair. I was awful with hair. I remember taking them to school one time, and they were dressed really neat, but their poor little hair, I couldn't do those bows and those clips. And I walked them in, and the teacher looked at me, and she goes, your wife's out of town, right? And I was like, yeah. But that's what a dad does. You know, when you think about what you would want out of a dad, that's what they want. They just want you there. You know, and part of the thing is, this is a cop-out with men going, well, you know, I'll do quality time with my kids. Kids don't want quality time. Kids want quantity time. They want you there as often as you can be there. They want you there all the time.
Could you talk about, like, growing up without a father, how your grandpa was there for you, and if he impacted your relationship with Christ?
Yeah, my granddad, he was a cool guy. He was a fireman in Hapeville. I think we had one fire in my entire lifetime in Hapeville. He was a man of few words, but he went to church every Sunday, and I would sit by him, and he would say to me, when I was little, he would go, nudge me if I start nodding off. And then by the time he got really old, he would go, nudge me if I start snoring. So he was okay with sleeping, he just didn't want to snore. But he was one of those old time guys. They didn't know how to say I love you, but he knew I didn't. I went to live with them because my mom had 2 other kids and she was working, and so I went to live with my grandparents for a while. And he was a fisherman. He was a fireman, so he'd work 24 and he'd have 48 off. And he took me fishing all the time, and that was my father figure at that point in my life. So the best thing I ever wrote. I wrote this story, and it was about my granddaddy taking me fishing, and I wrote the whole thing from a perspective of being 10 years old. And the story starts, he's waking me up. I look out the window, and it's dark, and he's waking me up, and I can hear him in the kitchen putting the cooler together. And I was just remembering my granddad taking me fishing, so I wrote this story. I was so proud of it. And because it ended, we went through the whole thing of loading the boat and catching, me getting hung up and him helping me. But at the end of the story, it's like, I hope I can go fishing with my granddaddy forever. That's how the story ends. So I made a little notebook of it. I sent it to my granddad. And he, of course, being my granddad, he never commented on it. And I asked my mom, I said, did he get that story I wrote? And my mother, I think he did. I think he liked it. And that was it. And I'm like, okay. So I thought it was really good. And so, like 5 or 6 years later, my granddad died. At the gravesite, we're walking to the car, and this lady I don't know comes up to me, and she goes, hey, I hate to bother you. And I'm thinking, she wants a picture, she wants an autograph, and, it's cool. And she goes, I hate to bother you. She goes, I lived across the street from your granddad. And she said, every couple of weeks I would go over there and just check on him. And she said, every single time I would go over there, and by that time he was in his late 80s and his breathing was bad and his eyesight was gone. She said, every time I would go over there, he would have me read a story you had written about him taking you fishing. And I'd start bawling. She said, I bet I read him that story 60 or 70 times. Of course, he never said a word about it. But he was of that generation. The way you showed people you loved them is you spent time with them. Our generation, man, I tell everybody I love them. That's the crazy thing, Doc, about being big bad men, is all the guys in my small group, we text each other, and that's the way these men sign off. I love you, dude. Love you, buddy. That's kind of awkward for guys to do, but get a small group. Find a group of guys. Now, if you, to start with, just talk about, hey, here's what I struggle with being a dad, or here's what I struggle about in marriage, or whatever, and then go and study the book of John or whatever. But just meet with a group of guys and do life together. You will thank me. You will come up to me in heaven and you will thank me and go, man, thanks for suggesting that. Doc, you already had your shot. Look how big this dude is, and I'm mouthing off at him.
Take away time. So if you have a moment to sit down and have breakfast with your dad, I know he's gone. What do you talk about?
Holy cow. I really struggled with that. My dad, before my dad left, he was actually like a deacon in the church. And he used to go around and witness at prisons. But then when my little brother was born, while my mom was in the hospital, he got caught in bed with a church organist. True story. So he was consistent. There were so many things because of the way that he lived his life and that I struggled with. He died in a car accident, got hit head on by a truck in 1999. And I just struggled because I was just like, well, if he was a deacon in the church, he had to love you, but he went so far off the rails. He had no guardrails. When he died, my grandmother gave me his Bible. And it only had one verse in the front, and it was John 5:24. But it's talking about once you believe in Jesus, it's a completed transaction. You have crossed over from life into death. And I will tell you guys that everything in this world's got an expiration date on it. Everything in this room, every chair, every speaker, every keg is going to be in a dump one day. The only thing in this room that doesn't have an expiration date on it is you. You go on forever. And that's important. So, but I really struggle with my dad. I'm like, why would he do that? Why would he do all these things? And people talk about God talking to them, and God's never audibly talked to me except one time in my life. And it was an Easter Sunday. We're in church. I wasn't thinking about my dad, hadn't thought about my dad in weeks. And right in the middle of singing, and it wasn't audible, but it was audible, I get this thing, your daddy's with me. And it was so powerful, I collapsed down in my chair and I sat there and wept through the rest of church. But it was Luke 15. That's the way he loves. You can't do anything bad enough that I'm going to stop loving you. And so that was really freeing for me. And so I thought, you know what, if this is the way God loves, and I want to look like him, and I'm created in his image, all those things that my dad did wrong, and there were a lot of things that he did wrong to me, I wrote them all down on a chalkboard. And like Jesus did with me, I wrote them on a chalkboard, and I got an eraser and I erased them. I said they were real, and I choose to forgive them. And if I sat down with him at lunch now, that's what I'd say. But I'm not here to judge you. I love you. And slate's white clean.
I'm in Doc's small group, by the way. Hey, has there been a time in your life where you felt like you lost sight or lost vision of your purpose, and how did you get back on track with it?
I think we all do that. We're fallible. I mean, I've had times in my life where I'm like, one of the things I confess to God almost every night when I go to sleep is I hadn't loved you the way I should. I wish I'd have done better at that. But yeah, there's been times in my life, a lot of times. But he's that dad in Luke 15. Bono, lead singer for U2, said the best stories are either about people running away from God or running towards him. And you're one of the two. I used to tell Ron White, I said, you're either living in a state of humility or you're headed towards one. But when you realize you've driven off the road, and that's what a small group does. A small group is almost like guardrails. And you think, well, why are there guardrails on the side of the road? Why? Somebody answer. Why is there guardrails on the side of the road? Keep you from driving down the hill into the ditch and hitting a tree. That's what a small group is. A small group is one of your buddies that sees you flirting with somebody at work and goes, dude, be careful. You need those guardrails. And we all screw up. He loves us anyway. And that's what he said at the cross. He goes, you're not just worth something. To me, you're worth everything. And so when we screw up, what do you want your kids to do when they screw up? Is come back to you and go, hey, here's what I did. I'm sorry. I'm going to try not to do it again. That's what he wants from us. Here's what I did. I'm sorry. Try not to do it again. You know what the word repent means? I always thought it meant, I'm sorry. You know what repent means? Change the way you think. So when Jesus would say to people, repent, it was like, change the way you think. So I love that word now. You can teach an old dog new tricks. I can change the way I think. I can say, I let it go. I'm not in control.
In the entertainment business, I'm sure you were probably pulled a lot of different ways, especially challenged a lot in your faith. Would you have any advice for someone like myself who's trying to go into that business, not in the comedian space, but more in like the film industry, of just how to maintain that groundedness?
A small group. I can't stress that enough. You hear guys talk about, oh, here's my favorite verse or here's my life verse. Mine must be weird because I've never heard anybody else say it was theirs. But my favorite verse is Galatians 1:10, and it says, am I now seeking the approval of man or of God? And I just decided with how I live my life, with how I do my act, with what projects I say yes or no to, if I do it in a way that God approves of it, then I really don't care what anybody else thinks about it. That's if you're in this business. Yeah, and I've turned it, and here's how cool God is. So the first year I quit IBM, when I quit IBM, I was making like 32 grand a year in 1984. First year I went on the road, I found that little, the little pocket calendars where you write all your dates. And I found the first year I was on the road, I did 406 shows and I made $8,300. So we had no money. And I had a guy approach me one time and he was doing truck stop tapes, doing little cassette tapes that he sold in truck stops. And he said, I'll give you $2,500 for every 30 minutes you can give me. But the problem is you're too clean. He said, I need you to throw some cuss words and things in there because I'm selling them to truckers. They don't want it to be clean. It's the only time in my career that I went against my gut, and I did it. And I wasn't even good at it, but I was throwing cuss words in there, and I gave the guy 90 minutes. So that was $7,500 for me in one night, which for a guy that made $8,000 the year before, $7,500 for a night, I'm like, I'm rich. The deal was I got no residuals on it, so that's all I ever made off of that was $7,500. That guy ended up selling 11 million truck stop tapes. So if he made $1 a tape, he made 11 million and I made 7,500. And I looked at God and went, I'm sorry. I won't do that again. But I sold out, for $7,500, which today I don't know what I did with it. I don't miss it. But so, yeah, I'm sorry. I'll try not to do that again, Dad. That's what we do when we fall. That's all I want for you. Find a group. Find 5 friends. You don't have to call it a Bible study. Call it whatever you want. Find some guys to do life with. Find some guys to be guardrails for each other. Because you all are masterpieces. You really are. That's the way God looks at you. He's like, I didn't make another one like this. I'm infinitely creative. Here's my masterpiece. Here's my masterpiece. Here's my masterpiece. But you were created with a purpose. And don't waste it. Don't waste your gifts. Don't waste your purpose. Don't chase the good things and miss the best thing. How many people by a show of hands know the full name of their great-grandparents? All 4 of them? You know their names? 2 guys, which is, I'm surprised there's 2. What that tells me, guys, is you are 100 years from being obscure. You are 100 years from nobody knowing your name or knowing you were alive. And the only thing that's going to matter 100 years from now is not how many golf trophies you had, how much money you earned. The only thing that's going to matter is the kind of kids you left behind that became parents themselves. Be good dads. Be good friends. Be good sons. Good brothers. And good husbands. That is the full in life. This other stuff isn't. There it is, God. Love me. Love each other. It's that easy. It's not complicated. That's why he said, come to me as a child. Just have that faith of a child. My mom's like that. My mom's not educated at all. But she's got the faith of a child. She just trusts God. And there's just something so pure and beautiful in that. And that's what I want for you guys. Be guys that when they're burying you, people are going, dang, that was a good man right there. That was a good dad. That was a good husband. I don't care if they say you were a good engineer or a good ball player. do what you were created to do and help each other do it. And that's the only way you will do it. You won't do it by yourself. We were meant to live in community. I was reading a thing a couple of weeks ago. They said people that drink and smoke but have great friends live longer than people that don't drink and smoke and live in isolation. We were meant to live in community. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming tonight. Thank you guys for having me.